little bit of a hiatus here. The team has been busy becoming a team, and lots of new players here on the scene. Good introductions in a minute, but and also busy starting the first phases of implementation and certainly raising lots of federal money fuel effort behind the implementation of the climate plan. But anyway, great to have everybody here in person and virtually. Good to see everybody's familiar faces. I want to make a couple of introductions. It's great stuff. You know.
Yes.
Great, Grace McKenzie.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, good. Really excited to have Grace join the council, and she's remote on there somewhere, but Grace is Senior Director of Policy for the Michigan Energy Innovation Business Council, the Institute for Energy Innovation. She has led building decarbonization work on the EIBC, but she also Gretchen Whitmer on a variety of issues and more, and really has an amazing background here. We're excited to have her join the council. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it's a little hard to hear your mic, so I didn't quite catch it before, but thank you. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
It was a brilliant introduction. I'm already getting great. Actually, it's probably not. Anyway, we're glad you're here. Can you hear me now?
It's cutting in and out. I heard just pieces of it.
Yeah, it's not very good, Phil.
Okay.
Maybe we'll start.
This was a problem last meeting.
It was. We even did a sound check this time.
Scooch this a little bit without causing too much trouble.
I think I was doing Landon's
Like the video,
introduction.
Frank.
I'm afraid to look up because I know what that will look like. See if that looks a little closer.
And we have an AD professional here. Impressive. Hey, can you hear me now?
I can't.
Yes.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I'm practically shouting. Okay. Grace, consider yourself introduced. We're glad you're joining the council here. And I also want to just mention that we've got some people who have renewed terms, reappointments. Cynthia Williams is here from Ford, who's here in the room with us. Welcome back. Marnice Jackson, I see you on the call there. Frank, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank God we brought Frank back. I said, thank God we brought Frank back.
This meeting would have been. Anyway, welcome back, everybody. Appreciate your service and being willing to return for a term here. Our first order of business is for me to take attendance. And let's start at the top of the alphabet, I think, with Frank Beaver, who I see is here. Dr. Director Boring from MDARD.
Thank you.
My partner in crime on many things here, state government. Is Director Bowen from DNR here? Or Scott Whitcup, maybe? Okay. We can run amok since the DNR team is not on the call. Director Corbin, I see you there. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you very much.
Carrie Dugan. Good to see you, Carrie.
You too.
Treasurer Eubanks. Treasurer Eubanks, or a representative.
Larry Steckelberg's here.
Hey, Larry. Good to see you. Jim Harrison.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good to see you, Jim. Director Hertel from DHHS, or a designate.
Aaron Ferguson here for Director Hertel.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining. Brandon Hoffmeister.
I'm here, Bill.
Oh, okay, good to see you, Brandon. Marnice, good to see you up there in my upper left-hand corner. Always the most stunning eyewear of any council member. Kevin Kolovar from Dow.
I'm here, thank you.
Good to see you, Kevin. No. Quentin Messer or anybody from MEDC? Okay, and we saw Grace already. Peck, Jonathan Overpeck, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Tanya is here
Here.
in person, Tanya Kozlowski. Lana Pollock, good to see your face. Dan Scripps, Chair Scripps, are you here? Stolper from U of M. Sam, are you around?
Niles is on.
What's it?
Niles.
Oh, Niles?
Niles from MDOT filling in for Director Refrick.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
Cynthia Williams is here. And I think that's it. We have our roll call. Next item is meeting minutes from our last meeting, which is way back in August 22nd. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes carefully? Okay, could I call for a motion to adopt the agenda? So, thank you, Darrell.
Second.
And Cynthia seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed or abstaining? Okay. The minutes are approved, and I went out of order here. Sorry, let's go back to the agenda for today. And we've already jumped into the agenda here, right? Doing minutes. Did everybody see the agenda here? We have an action-packed hour and a half here, but I should say that we're going to move to 2 hours, we think, for the remaining sessions for this year, and I'll explain why in a minute. But we're going to do some welcoming and what we're doing right now, just basically housekeeping. And then we've got an update from Corey, and there's a lot to update just on everything that's going on in the Office of Climate and Energy. And then Kara is going to review the legislative package that passed. We can do another victory lap on that, and then talk about the budget and some. And then we've got some next steps and final discussion. And our friend from Great Plains Institute is going to facilitate the rest of the session after I get done. Any comments on the agenda? If not, can I have a motion to approve that? So, okay, Darrell, thank you. Tanya, seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed or abstained? Then the last thing we have is schedule for meeting of 24. Sent out in the packet. We have 2 upcoming meetings. Of course, we're going to see each other. The Climate Council meeting.
Your sound is going again.
Yeah, Phil, we can't hear you.
At the Climate Council meeting, we will see each other, but it'll just be an informal luncheon with the Mackie J. But the 2 remaining meetings outside of that for this year are August 27th and November 12th, and they're 2 hours each. That's an adjustment from the original schedule, just so we have a little more discussion. And the idea is to have some updates or outside speakers. Like, if you may remember, maybe 2 or 3 sessions ago, MDARD gave an update on things they were doing in relation to the climate plan. So we may do more of that. Can I have a motion to approve the remaining meeting schedule for 2024? Okay, Darrell? Second. Tim, seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. The remaining meeting schedule is passed. So I just say another 30 seconds on why we're here. We said at the end of the last meeting or the beginning of the last meeting that back to April of 2023 or 2022, I guess, when the climate plan was introduced, and then there was a lot of work about just trying to put it into motion. The biggest part of that was to get last year's energy and climate legislation passed. That was a big lift, and everybody deserves a lot of credit for that. And Kara's going to give us a little update on what we've embarked on from all of that progress. Then there's a lot of money to raise, a lot of federal funding opportunities to take advantage of, and we also had a team to build here in the Office of Climate and Energy. So that's kind of where we're at to provide some updates on all of that right now. And then there are some near-term is good to gather with that group. We're hoping that you'll be helpful in promoting your network. I think I have some access to some promotional materials you can share in social media or however you might do that. And those are a couple of immediate things, but we really want we're trying to get to some regular ability to track progress that's happening across the economy, across different kinds of institutions, and across, for many of us on the Climate Council, we play a role in all of this. We're all an important part of making this happen. So we will try to incorporate that into meetings, but as things come up, I hope you'll let us know as we're formulating an agenda for a particular meeting. I've got something to share that's big and big or small. And we'll make sure that meets the light of day, because that's a big part of what we've got to do. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to hand it off to Trevor Drake of GPI, and he's going to facilitate.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
All right, wonderful. AV was a little spotty, but it might have been on my end. I'm Trevor Drake. I'm with the Great Plains Institute. We have the privilege of helping to facilitate these meetings. We have helped the state run a set of working groups to develop the My Healthy Climate Plan and have the privilege of continuing to assist the state of Michigan in a variety of ways. We also facilitate Minnesota's Climate Council, and we convene Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin together regularly to just share notes and talk about how they're each implementing their own climate and energy plans. So happy to be here. I'm also joined by my colleagues Amy and Tricia, who are helping with note taking for the meeting. I will hand it off now to Corey for an update from the Office of Climate and Energy.
Sure. You pretty much have to yell. Yeah.
Great. Hey, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Apologies for the folks in the room, especially Phil and Kimber, who are sitting next to me, because I'm going to be shouting this entire time. So you already heard from us about the agenda. Just a quick slide to make sure folks are clear where we are. We're at that 12:45 point where I'm going to talk to you all about the status updates on implementation of the climate plan and updates from our office. We try to do this on a quarterly basis. We try to provide an update on what's going on in the Office of Climate and Energy, but also our progress on meeting the My Healthy Climate Plan targets, both the kind of data related metrics, as well as some of the more qualitative or binary, did we or did we not do something metrics. So we'll go over that. First, I'm going to introduce you all to some of our team members, and then I'll run through some of the highlight programs and things that you may have heard about since our last meeting that we're really excited about. So first, this is an exciting thing for us. We have a bunch of folks that are joining the office or have joined the office since the last time we met. I've got a list of them here, and I'm not going to have everyone go around and introduce themselves, because as you can tell, it could take a little while. Not every We have, full-time staff, Julia Field, Jordan Power joining our office, largely helping with the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program and more broadly. You'll hear more about that in a second. Maggie Knight has been helping us with all of our federal funding work, which includes the 4 folks at the bottom, Haley, Tremaine, Heather, and Cassie. So if you see or are on calls with those folks, they are working on our behalf, helping to make sure we're maximizing federal funding. That is through a partnership with Great Plains Institute as well. Really lucky to have that support. And then you can see Kayla, Ali, and Sailor are our latest Climate Corps and AmeriCorps members, and they're doing a variety of things. Kayla and Ali just joined, and we're really excited to have them. And I see there are a number of folks on the call that I think hopefully also are welcoming new My Healthy Climate Corps members this past month. So to start, one of the big things that happened since our last meeting was we released the annual report for 2023. So it was formally released in January 2024 after being transmitted to the governor per the executive directive that asked for this report. Highlighted in the report includes a number of things that are kind of higher level, again, those sort of qualitative or policy related objectives. So passage of key clean energy legislation, you're going to hear a lot more about that later, but a lot of it was directly informed by the work that you all helped us with the My Healthy Climate Plan. It highlights all of the investments made in the state budget dedicated to plan implementation and climate action more broadly. Highlighted some of the recognition that we've been getting around pursuit of federal funding, some of the federal funding wins that we've seen, and some of the overarching metrics that we've seen in terms of clean energy jobs. It also include kind of statistical updates across the board where we have them on the key metrics around real world implementation of the climate plan economy-wide. And I will go through a couple of those. There's a whole kind of like year worth in the annual report from 2023. What I'm going to go through now are some of the updates from 2024. As a reminder, we try to do this on a quarterly basis. We're only going to share updates on stats that are updated. So we're not going to go over the same stuff that you saw last quarter or 6 months ago, but where there's new data on any of these metrics, we try to provide it. So you can see here, the update in the electricity sector. You can see the share of renewables decreased there. You saw the share of carbon-free energy decrease, but also the share of coal decreasing, slight increase in natural gas. A lot of that can be attributed to particularly the carbon-free piece. You can think about some of the investments in Palisades. Luckily, you've seen that news probably this month around starting that back up, and that should help with some of these metrics. And obviously, we just made commitments in legislation and more broadly to really driving forward on decarbonizing the electricity sector. In terms of electric vehicles, you can see, again, continued growth here with total number of charging stations going up to just over 1,400 and seeing particular increase just, I guess, by 84 since 2023. But we're expecting, again, with all the electric vehicle investments in the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program and otherwise, we're expecting to see even greater increases in future updates. So those are kind of that's the latest set of data, and it's always worth noting that oftentimes updated data does have a lag, so it's very possible that some of these numbers would be adjusted in future updates. Again, a number of vehicles on the road in Michigan. Reminder, we're trying to get to 2 million EVs and the infrastructure for 2 million EVs on the road by 2030. So we got a ways to go, but you can see continuing to see a steady climb, and would expect, again, with the tax credits and some of the incentives that have come out of here at the state level in recent months, expect to see that continue to increase at an accelerated rate. So those are the major statistical updates that we have at the moment. But again, the annual report has the major updates from all of 2023. This is just the latest data that we have available in first quarter 2024. And so there will be more to come at our next meeting as well, depending on kind of what other data sources are available. But again, we try to track any of the quantitative metrics in the climate plan. We try to keep track of this. Sarah Hutchinson from our team does a great job of that, keeps us up to date. One of the other things that didn't make it on the agenda isn't necessarily an annual report, but is a big piece of the data tracking that I want to highlight is one of the major commitments we made after the climate plan was released was to complete a statewide greenhouse gas inventory. We've been working on that. Sarah Hutchinson from our team has been working on that. And we'll be able to share more on that in the coming weeks and months. But we did release a preliminary version of it as a part of the CPRG program, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I wanted to highlight that too, that first step will help us with kind of having more foundational information as it relates to measuring our progress now and for years to come. And it's a pretty big milestone that it says something about the amount of climate action and progress we're making, that it's one of many things we're updating on here, because in the past it would have been one of the key highlights, and we will come back with a more detailed explanation of it in the future. Quick time check for myself. All right, so climate pollution reduction grants. There's a ton of content here. Our team has been working nonstop on it. EPA didn't do us any favors on timelines. If anybody attended any of our meetings, you saw us exhausted driving all over the state at the end of the year this last year. Literally, Jordan and Julia, who you saw listed on our slides before, they joined as part of getting this program done. Their first month of the job was basically driving across the state with me, which is not a maybe enviable task to have to undertake, trying to get the word out and get input from folks all over Michigan. So the way the program works is there are two phases. There's a planning phase and an implementation grants phase. The planning phase has a priority climate action plan that was due March 1. And then there's an implementation grant phase that was due April 1. So 1 month between the planning being completed and the applications being due. I'll walk you through kind of what was included in that priority climate action plan, and then what we ended up applying around. So the priority climate action plan was informed by all of the work that you all provided and did through the My Healthy Climate Plan process. So we were lucky to be building off of a My Healthy Climate Plan, like our actual state climate plan. A lot of other states were building from scratch, and the EPA really tried to write it so that states that already had plans in place could really leverage those, and we did. But we also did additional engagement. So we took all the work group recommendations, all of the information we got from other stakeholder engagement opportunities like the UP Energy Task Force and otherwise, and then we went across the state. We did 6 in-person meetings, 5 regional meetings, 1 with the 12 federally recognized tribes in Michigan, up in Traverse City at the MTAG meeting, put out a request for information. We put out a call for projects. We met regularly with tribes that also received the planning grants, and then 2 major metropolitan areas that also received planning grants, the Grand Valley Metro Council and the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. So through all of that, we gained a ton of input, and if that wasn't enough, we also got a ton of public comments, and we did virtual listening sessions as well. All of that to then really narrow in on a more specific set of priorities to help inform the implementation grant process. So our priority climate action plan included a focus on 10 GHG measures. I'm going to get through them quick because we got plenty to do, and I don't want to drone on, but it's available publicly. It's a very long document, but it's there, and encourage folks to take a look. But we ended up narrowing to 4 priority sectors. The nature of the EPA's guidance is that the sectors really need to be based on emissions reduction opportunities or sources of emissions. So while justice isn't called out as a priority sector as a part of this priority climate action plan, we did prioritize it. Each strategy includes a low-income disadvantaged community benefits analysis, and we tried to make sure to integrate that through each one. But the focus areas were electricity generation, commercial and residential buildings, transportation, and industry, aligning with some of the major priority areas of the climate plan. In the electricity sector, the first one was really focusing on siting renewables. We talk about it all the time, but siting renewables and energy storage across Michigan, that's come through. That was one of the priorities we said right when we launched the plan. It's been a priority throughout. You'll hear more about some of the updates on that on legislation, and you'll hear about that in our application. Energy storage investments as well to accelerate coal retirements and help us make sure that we have resource adequacy to enable further renewables integration. In commercial and residential buildings, driving building electrification through fuel switching, that was one of the priority areas, and we heard that loud and clear across a number of our stakeholder engagement sessions. The second is more broadly electrification in a way that really takes a whole homes approach and integrates weatherization, home repair programs, and thinks about how to make sure that we're really tying those things together and pursuing those in an equitable way. Folks remember that was one of the priorities coming out of the climate plan as well. And that continues to maintain prioritization for us. And then the last one was focused on decarbonizing government buildings and nonprofit facilities. This is really focused on being able to take advantage of the recently available tax credits that are now eligible through elected pay and direct pay for nonprofits and local governments and tribal governments. In the transportation sector, focus on state and local fleets. That was backed up and supported by the executive directive recently signed by the governor calling for 100% fleet conversion to zero emission vehicles, and DTMB is in the process of working through a plan on that. Excited to see that progress. Support access to public transit and non-motorized transportation as a priority. And then more broadly, just we need as much charging infrastructure as we can get. So that's kind of that last bullet here. And then the final category, a high level in industry, a high level call for kind of all of the above approach in terms of fuel switching, deployment of cleaner manufacturing technologies to drive localized air pollution reductions, increased energy efficiency, and trying to figure out how do we really reduce emissions from industry in a way that we haven't been able to in the past, and then reducing methane emissions from various sources. We heard this across the state through a lot of input. We heard local governments wanting to pursue more in terms of methane reductions at wastewater treatment facilities, and also at the local level around organics diversion from landfills and food waste. So those are the 10, went through them quickly, and they really set up and inform kind of what comes next in terms of the implementation grants. So the way that the program's structured is that for a local government, tribal government, state government to apply around one of these implementation grants, their measure needs to be reflected in a priority climate action plan. So for us, our priority climate action plan covers the entire state. Any entity that wanted to apply using our climate action plan could have applied under any of those 10 categories. We wrote them rather broadly to enable as many folks applying as possible and as many local units of government and tribal governments to apply as possible. And coalitions of those entities are also eligible. We also were eligible and did apply. So the program, there are applications for the general competition for states and other localities for April 1. Tribal deadline is a month later. And then there's $4.3 billion in awards nationwide, a range of award amounts. And you can see, even though that's a lot of money, 30 to 115 awards nationwide. When you think about 45 states took advantage of this program, or certainly going to apply with multiple applications. There were 60 plus local units of government, regional units that got planning grants, and then all the tribes that got planning grants, plus coalitions, plus other local units of government that might apply independently. Not that much money to go around at the end of the day if that's the number of awards. So just trying to make sure folks are realistic about what the opportunity here is. But we are really excited and optimistic about some of the things that we prioritize. So state of Michigan, now there are other entities at the local level and they may have applied independently or as part of coalitions. Not going to try and give a comprehensive sense of that here, but we do know that a bunch of other folks applied. No one needed to notify us if they did, but we did provide letters of support for a number of them. The state of Michigan application, so we We led one application directly that was just the state of Michigan. That's accelerating siting, zoning, and permitting to reach 60% renewable energy in Michigan. A Midwest Industrial Decarbonization Challenge. So we led this coalition of Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, and us all signed on, along with the industrial assessment centers at each of our state universities, to compete over a broader pool of about $415 million around industrial decarbonization projects, along with another pool of funding to provide technical assistance around said projects, with a prioritization of reducing localized air pollution as a part of it. Department of Transportation has signed on to a Midwest Regional Electric Vehicle Acceleration application led by Minnesota. And then Eagle signed on to a Resilient Local Energy Systems National Coalition led by Hawaii, along with 15 other states. That is really centered around getting renewables and energy storage to local government properties across the state and taking advantage of direct pay and elective pay tax credits. Under that one, we'd see potentially about 28 million coming to the state of Michigan if that coalition is successful. A little bit more detail on each of them. So we ended up applying to expand the Renewable Ready Community Award Program, so siting incentive program for local governments to site renewables in Michigan, as well as launching a brownfield pilot program. With this investment, we would be able to provide this incentive to local governments to reach our 60% renewables target as laid out in the My Healthy Climate Plan by 2030, and incentivizing local governments to site at the local level and permit at the local level. In addition, it would provide technical assistance for those communities as well. And we carved out a certain portion that would be dedicated for tribal communities. That's the one that we led. That is just the state of Michigan. This is the partnership that we talked about. Again, it would be a first round of technical assistance, largely routing through the various industrial assessment centers here in Michigan. That's Michigan State University in each state, and then a broader grant competition between the industry in each state for deeper decarbonization projects, setting a baseline of no less than 40% emissions reductions from each facility as a result of the projects that they be invested in. This last one I can't speak as closely to. I think that, and in fact, I think a couple of the numbers might have changed in the last couple of weeks. The deadline was yesterday, so I don't have the exact number. But this was a partnership between Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and MDOT is the lead on this. If successful, we would see a potential pilot for a multi-use charging hub in Michigan, and an extension of the Rev Midwest Coalition. And then finally, the Resilient Local Energy Systems I mentioned. This one's applying again for the max amount and then splitting it between 15 states, provide some level of grant support and lending support to take advantage of direct pay tax credits, in particular for local units of government. For folks that aren't familiar, direct pay tax credits and elective pay basically extends the benefits of tax credit programs to nonprofits and local governments, tribal governments, institutions that previously did not pay taxes. They now can file and get right now between 30 and 70% off the cost of the system. But it is a slightly more complicated process, but it does expand that. And so that's kind of the intention to focus that one. I'm moving quickly. There will be time at some point, I think, for questions and such. And obviously, you all have access to our team and can always reach out. But I want to transition here to the My Healthy Climate Corps. We launched that March 18th through 20th in Detroit. That picture is from the cohort. It's in Cadillac Place in downtown Detroit, in New Center there. We had a 3-day kickoff. It's 30 folks. They're just incredible. And I know we think My Healthy Climate Corps, and you think like younger folks getting into the space. And yeah, we have some recent graduates, and we also have folks pivoting into new careers. We have folks with many years of experience that are just inspired to help figure out how we implement the My Healthy Climate Plan. I was fired up. Phil joined us. Senator Sam Singh joined us. A number of community organizers and activists joined us for trainings and such. And this is a group that's out in nonprofits, local governments, across state government, helping us figure out how to implement the My Healthy Climate Plan. I'm really excited about it. It's something we've talked about with you all for a long time. This is the first cohort. We'll have a second cohort that we'll be recruiting host sites for soon. And then this is the list of entities. So Eagle right in the middle, because we got a couple and I just introduced them earlier, but you can see a couple other state agencies, LEO, DNR, others, and then you can see a lot of local government entities, a lot of our core state partners, Michigan Saves, in Detroit, Detroit Future City, a number of really incredible organizations that are getting added support, and we'll be coordinating and working with those folks throughout their time. We're going to meet with them as an office monthly, but they get a bunch of other training and support beyond that as well. I do see a hand flagging up, and I'll pause in case it's something specific to this. Otherwise, I can keep going and get to the questions in a second. Yeah. Lana, did you have a question on this, or do you want, or is it more broad?
I was trying to move the banner so I could see the screen better. Excuse me.
Sure.
It's down.
Got it. Great. Great.
It's dangerous to touch these things.
Yeah. And we do have a map that we can provide to at some point. So that's the Climate Corps. We'll have more on that in the future and more asks around recruiting new host institutions. I wanted to highlight another major thing that's happening, and you're going to hear a lot more chatter about it in the coming weeks. We're expecting the announcement around the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which includes the Solar for All, which Eagle applied around, the National Clean Investment Fund, the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, which I know a number of entities, including Michigan Saves, are really positioned well to receive funding around. Those were supposed to be announced March 1. We're hearing that they could be announced any day. So we're very excited to figure that out with you. We have a webinar on the Solar for All later today, mostly to update folks on what that program is and what we applied around and what would hypothetically happen. We were hoping that that webinar was going to be about the program itself, but we had so many folks, we had hundreds of people sign up, so we're going to continue to hold that time later today, and we'll talk about that. But these are really big opportunities and are going to be, I'd imagine, big topics in the future. And I'm sure you all will see quite a bit of traffic on it as soon as they are announced. So with that, that's all I have. So thank you for listening to us. To me, drone on for a little bit. The one thing I will do, because I can't not do it every time I get a chance, is please register for the My Healthy Climate Conference. Please spread the word, share it. We've got an incredible lineup of speakers. We'll be announcing a bunch of them over the next week or two. And it's going to be a really wonderful event. I know folks that attended last year. It was incredible for me and inspiring for me. I hope it was for other people too. And we're hoping to outshine last year's event. And this year we're in Lansing. And again, for council members, we'll be doing luncheon again with the MAC-EJ and the Council on Climate Solutions. Thought that was really wonderful last year and excited to continue it. So with that, I can hand it back to Trevor in case he wants to facilitate any questions, and then Kara's probably ready soon.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, we're a little behind, but let's pause here and see if council members have questions. I'll just say that the opportunity for questions in the chat, please reserve that for council members. A nice thing about these meetings is they are open for folks to observe, but we want to reserve that opportunity for the members of the council themselves. So Corey and Director Roos, I'll maybe rely on you to let me know if there are questions in the room. Folks online, please feel free to use the raise hand feature, starting with Peck. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I don't think this is a red herring, but I keep hearing from just about everyone, and whenever I drive around, I get the sense that we're just not getting the charging stations implemented nearly as fast as we had hoped. What's the big problem there? Is it just, because that I think is, if you read the literature in the newspapers and magazines, that's what's inhibiting uptake of electric vehicles, perhaps. Anyone want to comment?
Well, I think I'm happy to take a stab at it, but I think if I knew the answer, it might not be a problem. I would hope, but I do think one thing I would point to is I do think that we are just seeing a bit of a lag in a bunch of the resources that are coming. And so I would expect there to be a pretty big uptick. It's just taking time for some of the federal resources to flow. Some of the tax credit guidance hadn't even come out yet until a couple weeks ago. And I know it just takes some time to ramp up some of those programs. I see some nodding heads from folks that maybe are even more in the know on uptake challenges right now. So if other members of the council had answers to that, I'd welcome those. And if other people in the room here have thoughts, welcome that as well.
Yeah, it makes sense to that, to sort of measure what's not moving as fast as you hoped. The other thing I saw in your presentation that is kind of disturbing is the surge in gas, natural gas.
Yeah, and I don't know that I have like a response to that, except that I do think, as we've talked about, obviously incentives are taking time, but we just saw the legislation pass that I think is going to drive a rapid deployment of renewables over the next stretch. You saw the focus we have on the siting challenge for increased renewables, and we have that energy storage target as well, which will help for greater displacement of fossil fuel generation on the electric grid over time as well. So again, I think we've taken a bunch of, this is why we try to provide the update that is both the statistical update and the what have we done to try and address some of these things and accelerate them as a part of the update. But point well taken. I don't know, again, if other folks on the call have responses to that or thoughts, I'd welcome those too.
Niles, did you want to jump in on
Yeah.
the charging stations?
Yeah, this is Niles. I've been involved directly with the NEVI program. So the using federal funds comes with a lot of strings, and it took a bit of time, admittedly, to try to figure out the best way to deploy these charging stations in a competitive manner. We did eventually get there. We made announcements of the sites that were selected earlier this month. One of the other challenges that we're facing is supply chain on the utility side. No fault of the utilities, it's just there's a lot of demand for this product. So that would be my simple answer to the question.
Brandon, do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I was actually going to address the gas question that Peck had. I think one of the things in the data that happened last year is we retired a big coal plant and brought in, as part of our retirement of our next big coal plant next year, an existing natural gas unit into our supply mix. So no new emission to the atmosphere to Michigan, but from a consumer's energy resource adequacy planning, that allowed us to do that coal retirement early. And so that may, Corey, I don't know if your numbers are just our supply or if they're aggregates in the state of Michigan, but that may be what you're seeing as what appears to be an uptick in natural gas. It might be a little misleading.
Yeah, thanks. We'll take a look at that and flag it and see if I can get some more details on kind of where that's coming from.
Other questions at this point in response to Corey's presentation? Lana, go ahead.
Yeah, there was a reference, quick reference to a desire to put some of the new green installations, energy installations into brownfields. I'm interested in that. I'm wondering how that works when the brownfield hasn't been without polluter pay. We don't clean up so much. How's that project going? How's that? Anybody offer anything on that?
Yeah, I can offer a little bit, though I'll note that what we highlighted there was an application for funding to run a pilot program. We haven't seen that many brownfields sited projects built in Michigan. We had one that really received some support from our brownfields program, working in partnership with a couple of utilities, and I think saw that as a potential lesson learned to figure out how to facilitate that further. But the proposal we put there is a $10 million program to cover the incremental costs above and beyond what it would cost typically to site a project, and try to figure out those lessons learned to figure out what the best way to approach that is. And we developed that in partnership with our brownfields team and our remediation division here at Eagle. And they would be kind of key on that. Again, that is hypothetical if we get that money, but it has become a pretty big priority for us to figure out how to best facilitate some of those projects. Yeah, so that's kind of what I have on that one, I think.
I can just add something. Lana, you may be aware of
Sure.
this, but in the governor's recommended budget for Eagle, there's a proposal to raise the tipping fee on waste
Yes.
that goes into landfills, that a key that would raise quite a bit of money if it's enacted. And the target for that would be contaminated sites and cleanup in general, recycling, but also a lot on just brownfield redevelopment specifically. And we're really making that a big priority within Eagle to try to ramp up that effort.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Other questions at this point? Any questions in the room? Can't see everybody on the in-room camera.
Doesn't look like it.
All right. I think we can move on then. Next item on the agenda is Kara Cook, Eagle Chief of Staff, who's going to give us an update on or a summary of the 2023 legislative package. And Kara was a major part of putting that together and advancing it. So looking forward to hearing about that.
All right, let me do my best to share my screen here, get it out of slideshow mode. All right, so I'm going to try to go through this quickly so we can get back on track. But to bring us back in August, the governor delivered a What's Next address, which was a state of the state-like speech where she outlined her legislative agenda for fall of last year. Within that, she outlined 4 things that she wanted folks to focus on that directly aligned with the climate plan. The first was enacting a 100% clean energy standard. So that's to spark jobs and economic development. Second was lowering costs with an increased focus on improving our already kind of national standards around energy efficiency. Third was removing barriers to build and deploy renewable energy through permitting improvements for large-scale projects. And finally, but not least, was expanding the tools of our Michigan Public Service Commission to make sure that they can consider things like climate and equity in their decision-making. So altogether, this was really a proposal around an ambitious clean energy framework that was bold, but pragmatic and achievable. She wanted to make sure that the legislature got something to her desk that was signable and implementable at the end of the day. So we got really lucky working with many of you, our stakeholders across the state and our partners in the legislature to get a really bold package across the finish line. This actually was more than what the governor even called for. So the legislature really over-delivered here. So she ended up signing 6 bills that, again, kind of created an ambitious, equitable clean energy framework that was also achievable, balanced reliability and affordability, and attempted to embed justice, worker protections, and long-term climate protections in decision-making. So it's really transformative for Michigan. There's far too much for me to walk through all of these bills in detail, particularly knowing that we're behind, but I wanted to offer a few highlights. So as you can see here, we have a handful of Senate bills as well as 2 bills from our House of Representatives. But I want to transition quickly into talking about a few of the highlights and really the impacts of these bills versus walking through what you guys could read in legislative language. So to start, these bills really surge Michigan into a national leadership position, particularly on clean energy standards, with an 80% clean energy standard by 2040 and a 100% clean energy standard, or by 2035, sorry, for the first, and 100% by 2040. This is about 10 years ahead of the goals of our My Healthy Climate Plan. So again, really over delivering. The second was this bill package outlined opportunities for historic increases in renewable energy. It set us up on a path that we can 4x our renewables in just 10 years with a 50% renewable energy standard by 2030 and a 60% renewable energy standard by 2035. These bills also established an energy storage standard that directly aligned with the climate plan and offered opportunities to streamline the siting process, particularly for large-scale wind, solar, and storage projects, while supporting communities that host those projects. Again, these bills directly align with the goals of the My Healthy Climate Plan around renewable energy standard, siting improvement, and storage. Continuing moving forward, on the renewable topic, these bills really centered a big focus on how we could move Michigan's rooftop solar market forward. So these are small scale renewables as well. So this is a 900% increase from current statute to where we ended with the bills that the governor signed. So moving us from a 1% cap, I want to acknowledge that many of our utilities had already voluntarily gone above that cap, but this enshrines a 10% cap in requirement into law to make sure we have a really robust market and people can take advantage of rooftop solar, particularly with the federal resources that are available right now. And last but not least on this is these programs really build upon our nation leading programs for energy waste reduction, or as many people call energy efficiency elsewhere, expanding these programs and making sure that we're saving money for families and businesses. On top of improving the standards here, for the first time, these programs also include a new focus on low income households to make sure the folks that need this most have the opportunity to take advantage of it, and opportunities for efficient electrification. These programs strongly align with many of the different built environment goals that you see throughout the climate plan. And while the energy provisions in this bill seem to get the most attention across the board, these bills also met many of the goals of the climate plan around just transition, worker protections, and environmental justice. So I want to highlight those as well. On environmental justice, these bills, for the first time ever, allow the commission to consider climate, environmental justice, affordability, non-discrimination in their decision-making around long-term utility plans. These are often referred to as integrated resource plans. This change alone is really transformative, but these bills have a number of other environmental justice protections within them that I'm happy to answer questions on. One of the other things that I just want to highlight is these bills really strengthen the commission and EGLE's tools on environmental justice in a number of different ways and expand public engagement and new opportunities for community voices and ratepayers to really get their voices heard in commissions so their experiences can be taken into consideration. And then on labor, these bills adopt some of the nation's strongest labor standards for clean energy workers. All approved projects in these integrated resource plans or siting cases will require prevailing wage, project labor agreements, as well as the utilization of union apprenticeship programs. And they also incentivize diverse worker development and hiring, particularly from environmental justice and low-income communities. And last but certainly not least, these bills create a new Office of Worker and Community Economic Transition, very long title for our new office, to ensure that while we're working with our partners in the private sector, organized labor, and communities, we have a proactive plan to uplift these workers as they experience the ongoing market shifts towards clean energy and cleaner transportation solutions. So before I move on to my next topic, there's kind of a part 2 of my presentation here. I just wanted to show you a few different ways visually to really talk about the impact here. These bills, aren't perfect. They're not the end of our journey, but like I said, they are transformative. This chart on the screen really shows where we were last October when we were discussing these bills with our partners in the legislature versus what just went into law earlier this year. And you can really see a stark difference on a number of these of where there's going to be some pretty incredible improvements. And then again, I want to show just a non-exhaustive list of items of how these new laws align really directly with the goals that all of you helped us identify as key strategies for the My Healthy Climate Plan. And if you compare this to what the governor called on the legislature to do, you can see how they really overachieved, but more than anything, how they used this tool that we all put together as their roadmap to make sure that this was going to be something that was bold, achievable, and really Michigan-centric. So I guess I just want to end with this section and saying thank you to all of you on the council and those that have listened and provided input through this process to make sure that we could get this over the finish line. And please know that the legislature has not slowed down. They're already working on a number of bills that are actively in progress that are also on key strategies that were outlined in the My Healthy Climate Plan. And that's everything from sustainable aviation fuel to a clean fuel standard. So a lot more to come in our upcoming meetings. So my second topic, and I'm going to go real brief here because I have taken longer than I had planned. I know the last meeting we talked about all of the great things that were in the governor's previous budget that she passed bipartisanly through our legislature, but she also just this February issued her next executive budget recommendation. And this really focused heavily on climate, had over $400 million across 8 departments really dedicated to expanding existing and exploring new climate initiatives. So almost every single focus of the climate plan was included in the governor's budget. So in energy, you're going to see several investments that are tied to the laws that we were just talking about that got passed late last year, as well as new and existing programs help us meet our broader clean energy goals. On transportation, you're going to see a focus on increasing access to clean public transit, as well as continuing the state's leadership on fleet electrification, new charging infrastructure, and new clean fueling infrastructure with a large focus on hydrogen as well. In housing, sorry about that, my slide messed up. There's a continued focus on pre-weatherization, weatherization efforts that, as we've talked about before, are really precursors to making sure that we have the cleanest built environment we can have. In the natural and working land space, there's a new program focused on sustainable supply chains, regenerative agriculture, and climate smart agriculture, and so much more that I'm sure Director Boring would be happy to talk about at some point. On the just transition side of things, we have $15 million for that new office to make sure that it can meet its really large and robust mission within Director Corbin's shop. And I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight that even though we know the My Healthy Climate Plan is a climate mitigation plan, we've been continuing to identify opportunities to adapt to climate change and make our communities more resilient to them. So Eagle's budget included just over $15 million for climate resilient infrastructure to help reduce things like flooding and expanding our sewer infrastructure to make sure that communities aren't experiencing as extreme impacts of climate change. I guess I'll end here by saying, just like we did last year with the legislation and with the budget, we really need your help to get a lot of these items across the finish line. So we hope that you'll stay active, because without this legislation, without the federal funding that Corey and his team are focused on, and without some really key investments at the state level, we're going to have a harder and harder time meeting our climate plan goals. But if what we've done over the last 6 months is any indication, I think we can do it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kara. Lots of great stuff happening. Let's open it up for questions again from council members only. Please use the raise hand feature if you are online. If you're in the room, flag down Director Roos or Corey or Kimber or somebody who can let me know.
We have Tanya here.
Tanya, please go ahead.
Thank you. First, I want to say congratulations and thank you to all of you that I know put in many, many hours and a lot of stress to make this happen. It really is an incredible package that I work with many folks in the region and across the country that I am touting as examples that others should be looking at in thinking about energy policy, climate policy, and particularly the energy justice work that's included there. My question is around implementation, and I'm thinking as it relates to my work specifically around the Utility Consumer Participation Board dollars and how those changes are being implemented. And obviously goes along with the opportunity for the commission to look at things like environmental justice and climate and affordability. In working with some community organizations, sort of the gap between desire to be heard on some of these things And feeling and having the resources, not just the money, but having the time and having the capacity, and then having the knowledge to participate in cases at the Public Service Commission remains massive. And so I guess my question is is there anything happening, recognizing we're early in implementation, to just help close that gap and make sure that those dollars are really effectively increasing the voices of impacted communities in these cases?
Yeah, I guess I'd say a few things. So as I mentioned, in one of the pieces of this legislation, Senate Bill 502 or Public Act 231 of 2023, we actually increased the funding, the annual funding for the Utility Consumer Participation Board, the number of cases that people could be involved in, and just regular public comment opportunities and opportunities for engagement with the commission. Because not everybody's going to want to be an intervener that's potentially subject to what is the word I'm looking for? Doesn't matter. There we go.
That is worse.
So I think there are a number of different things. The budget is really kind of that immediate opportunity to make sure that we get those dollars across the finish line. And that will include funding, again, not only for UCPB to help support more groups in doing this and train more groups on how to do this effectively, but make sure that we have the staff at LARA in the Attorney General's office that can aid them in that work. I do think, that can be really challenging work. So if there are opportunities for any of you that have some more deep expertise to engage directly with impacted groups on how to best engage and get certain things on the record and really make a difference in these policies as we move them forward, the more equitable these bills are going to be implemented. And if you have certain things that we should be thinking about at Eagle, or I can share with our colleagues at the Public Service Commission who weren't able to join today's call, we are all ears for that.
Great. I appreciate that. And I think yes, we'll maybe bring some ideas to the table for you. Thank you.
Yep. And I believe the commission also has an open order on that, if I'm not mistaken, where people should be providing feedback as well. So I would really encourage everybody to look not only on that piece, but on all of these pieces at the commission's website to really see how you can plug in. They're going to need expertise from across the board to figure out how they get all of this implemented in the right way, the most equitable way. And there are a number of programs that they're being charged with that they've never had to think about before at the commission. So it's really going to need to be a team sport getting that across the finish line in the best way.
Thanks, Tanya, for the good question. Peck, on to you. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I want to not lose track of the fact that what has been accomplished in the last year is just incredible and awesome. At the same time, I want to keep pushing hard. And I wonder about, with the new cap on distributed energy, up to 10%, if there's been much discussion about the virtual power plant or distributed energy resource concept. In other words, starting to utilize the distributed energy in a more effective way by being able to share it back onto the grid and vice versa.
So, we've had a few conversations on this topic, primarily through some of the new federal funding opportunities, like the U.S. Department of Energy's Loans Program Office, that has been encouraging folks across the country, including a number of folks in Michigan, on how to approach something like a virtual power plant opportunity. So right now, we're really kind of in our fact finding and understanding who's interested in exploring some of those concepts. Corey, anything else that you would add, or anyone else in the room on that topic? Or on screen, that's on the council. I don't mean to exclude you guys.
I don't have anything to add. It looks like Carrie might, but I think that's the main vehicle with which we can think about this. Is some of these federal funding opportunities make that an even more likely possibility, and so we've been kind of digging in there and taking any and all meetings for anybody who's interested in some of those programs, and a lot of them have been interested in critically virtual programs.
Carrie, did you want to go ahead? It looks like your camera is on, but maybe the cover is over it, or maybe it's just not coming through. But either way, there we go.
Yeah, just real quick, I'll make sure I get it once I have the final recording, but many of you know, and many of you participated in an event we did with the Milken Institute in Detroit a month ago, towards the end of February, with the DOE loan program, with the two major announcements predating the Palisades announcement, and then Department of Commerce, and obviously University of Michigan had a whole first day dedicated to them, Go Blue. That unpacks both opportunities in utility scale projects as well as community scale. And I thought it was really beautiful how that all came through. So I want to make sure that everyone on the council has that recording. There might be some good nuggets for you to dig into there.
All right. Other questions that folks have? Anything in the room at this time?
No.
All right, and I saw that Darrell put a link to the energy legislation implementation website in the chat, so folks have that. Let's see. Other questions from folks? And it.
You just got to put. Peck, are you up again, or you just have your hand up from before?
Up from before.
I hope that
sounds
means that
menacing.
Yeah, it looks like he's pointing at y'all and.
Yeah.
And Carrie, I assume
button you can get to fastest. Sorry.
Carrie, your hand is. Oh, there we go. I was gonna say that's up from before as well. Let's see. Well, Peck, I did want to go back. You had something in the chat earlier that we missed. I wonder if you want to speak to that. You were asking about if it would make sense to be more clear about what the next year's goals are. Did you want to speak more to that?
Well, I know we want to keep track of the monitoring how well we're doing, but I think sometimes it really helps in an effort like this where, time is very limited really to make a difference, is if it wouldn't be better for us to articulate in a graphic way what our goals really look like. And then at the end of the year say, well, how well did we do in meeting those goals, and where we fall short, really making sure we understand why and what we can do differently to improve the situation next time. It sort of goes back to my, questions earlier about charging and natural gas. And I think it's really important to understand why we're getting the sort of less encouraging results that we're getting. And I think we, like Brendan said, I understand why the gas numbers had to go up now. And I do understand that the money is just starting to flow. But the bottom line here is it'd be good to have realistic targets for each year, as best we can make. Maybe that's asking too much.
I think that's a fair point. I think it's probably a little challenging right now to put it down to what are we going to get in 2024. I know in Eagle, we have asked this goes beyond climate, we've asked all of the offices and all the program areas we got 3-year goals. And there are some in there that follow the climate plan implementation for Corey's office. But I think it's a fair point to try to see where we can bring more specificity to it, even if it's a bit of a swag right now on a 1-year basis. What are we going to get to? Because there's a lot that is outside of our control.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. We can explain why we might not have met a goal in those cases. But, we don't really have, with the climate goals and what's going on with the climate emergency, we don't really have time to wait 3 years to sort of see if we made it or not. You know, we really have to be more real time. And I think that's a big problem with what we're doing, writ large, in our energy transition space. We know that energy transitions and similar types of transitions have always gone quite slowly in the past. And we're asking to do something faster this time with the energy transition we're going through now. So we have to have new approaches. And I don't know if this would help, but at least aspirational goals each year might be really helpful. And we can't do 2024 now since it's already begun, but we could at least be planning on 2025, having those goals articulated by the end of this year.
I agree.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd just ask is if you have suggestions on some of the data sources we might be able to use for something like that. Like, obviously the projection is one thing, but the actual measuring of our success in meeting that projection, oftentimes the data we get lags by, months, if not a year or more sometimes.
Well, that's true, but I mean, you had the data, you showed data for 2023, so, we got to go with what we've got.
Yeah.
We can't, but the other thing we could be doing is trying to be more thoughtful, and I'm just doing this off the top of my head, so it's probably crazy, but more thoughtful about looking at what other states are doing. And, for example, California just, their commission just passed a distributed energy resource provision. And, we can be looking and learning from how things get implemented in other states as we implement. And we can have goals that are set that are informed by how well these other states did once they set the similar type of goal.
Yeah. With Heck, we've actually launched an external benchmarking effort across all of Eagle's program areas, but climate included. So there probably will be some useful insights and maybe metrics to look at from that.
And Heck, this is Kara. The other thing I would add is we're also a part of the U.S. Climate Alliance. As a part of that, we get like a dashboard of every climate action that every state within the alliance that makes up over 50% of the U.S. population. So it's something that we track really closely with them as well. So that's, something that we have an hour-long meeting with all of the other states about what they're doing, particularly as all of us start to look at federal funding and implementation of a few pieces of legislation over the last few years.
And I'll add, and I see Marnice there's a lag going on in terms of the actual screen here, so I don't know whose hand is up, but because that says it's Lana, but the picture is nice. But so one of the other things that we do, and Trevor helps us with, is the state deployment states all over the country. So we actually have a pretty good pulse on what other states are doing, and do talk quite often in a number of venues. So U.S. Climate Alliance particularly, but even more broadly than the U.S. Climate Alliance states, we also have had a number of convenings in person, particularly around the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program and some other initiatives, and definitely do compare notes.
And it is Lana with her hand up, not Marnie.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. I think that we need to be, as we are, but perhaps try and build this into the goals, hang on to what we've won. We are the legislation is under attack, and I think there is a definite link between letting the public know, informing. Well, first of all, meeting our goals, making good use of the legislation that has been passed, and taking note of the progress that has been made, to help educate the public that going backward would be a very bad idea. But we once had the best polluter pay legislation in the country. It lasted 5 years. And we don't want this to be a short-term victory. This is an ongoing battle, and there will always be those who will try and turn the clock back. And I think we have to work in that within that framework, consciously and articulated as well.
And if no one has a hand up, can I go again?
You may.
I think Lana has a really good point there. And
Our screens are frozen.
it would make a lot of sense for us also to focus on not just educating the public, but building better relationship with the public. Figuring out where that opposition is coming from. Some of it, of course, could be, really crazy shit going on in our state, but some of it could be things we could actually maybe circumvent and fight in a more constructive way by building having town halls in certain parts of the state where we bring in experts who can really talk in a two-way manner with the local residents and their leaders about what the benefits of, say, bringing in more chargers are, bringing in more renewable energy, doing distributed energy resources with, how the utilities can then start paying people for their energy they don't use once they've got it, things like that. We really should be trying to win hearts and minds. And I saw Marnice giving a big heart, so that's where I got the idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Beck. And so, was there something in the room that I missed?
We do have someone in the room. Cynthia had.
Yeah, just one comment. You mentioned that you meet with the U.S. Climate Alliance to talk about what other states are doing to be helpful. If you guys could put together a best practices document and also come back to the members of the council to let us understand if there's help needed and things that we can do to progress this sooner.
Yeah, we're happy to talk to the U.S. Climate Alliance. We might be able to even have somebody from their team come to the next meeting to talk through the database. Not all of that's public. It is for like Alliance members, but they'd be happy to share it with all of you. The one thing I would say on like best practices is, there are best practices in California that we wouldn't necessarily say are best practices here. So it is going to be on a state by state basis, but on the trend side in particular, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. The one thing I'd want to add just briefly back on what Peck had just said, like Corey's team, Julie Stablin's team, a number of folks across state government are doing a lot of like webinars and public engagement on this, but so are more community-based organizations. So I would really suggest, whether it's folks like Durrell and NRDC that are doing work with different communities, or Tanya, Frank, like most of you that are meeting with communities regularly, if you guys have the opportunity to help talk about the real life impacts of some of what we're doing, not just the legislation, but the budget and the federal funding work, like I think it's good to have that not only come from the state. We're not always the best messenger for these things. So the more that you can identify some of those community, your own networks and some more community driven communication, I think that would be incredibly helpful.
And we can help with resources on that. If folks are really excited about something like that, or want to host something, we can show up, or we can also just get you more materials and information about what's going on.
There's a couple of that, and that's helpful to hear, Corey, that, that's offered if we want to do something like that. This, I guess, two questions, one more in the weeds and then other, that's an idea. One, I know we're very early in the MPSC's implementation of the climate bills. One, has Eagle started to think about, how you will engage in that process? Obviously, there's some more specific touch points in the IRP portions of it, but more broadly, even this touch points with chair scripts and folks over there. And then two, the other idea, I didn't know that Trevor, I guess, helps manage like the Minnesota, our equivalent over there. Wouldn't it be great to maybe have a, conversation with them or have a joint meeting, this idea, kind of share ideas in terms of how they operate. So, but there's two pieces there.
Yeah, on the implementation side with the MPSC, I'll say like our leadership team is meeting with the leadership team over at the Public Service Commission really regularly, their legislative liaison, their COO, as well as the commissioners. We also have some kind of individual tracks of implementation conversations, particularly around the advisory opinion that Eagle provides on environmental justice and climate. So they'll be having one-on-one conversations with the experts on both sides and engaging folks like Regina Strong in our Environmental Justice Public Advocate Office. So lots of conversations currently happening, but those will get more specific on key issues as they continue to work through implementation.
Yeah, and we actually have a lot of contact with Minnesota right now across Eagle. We see the director there once a month and ongoing, but I think you guys have had some contact, have you?
Yeah, well, in 9 minutes, we have our standing Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin check-in. It's literally it just popped up.
Yeah, you guys want to do
it? Literally just popped up on my calendar notice here. So just for what it's worth, and Trevor helps facilitate that conversation, but we meet with them regularly and share that's sort of like with the counterpart offices in those states. So Maria Redmond from Wisconsin, and then Kate Knuth and Frank Kolash from Minnesota.
And I was just going to derail on your point about the Minnesota Council. One thing I heard here that the council in Minnesota has been thinking about is just what you all were talking about. Can the council members help communicate about the state's climate plan, and so that those messages are not just coming from the state, and because you all as council members have credibility with communities and constituencies and audiences that the state may not have the same level of credibility with. So, building a broader, sort of a broader coalition around supporting the My Healthy Climate Plan.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 8 minutes left. Maybe I'll do a final call for questions or comments. I'm not seeing anything online. I'm also not seeing indication of anything in the room. So, Director Roos, I will. Oh, was there something, Corey? I see a hand up there. No, Director Roos, I will hand it back to you to wrap us up and talk about next steps.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Big thanks to Trevor and also to Corey and Kara. You and the broader OCE team have really done some amazing work and getting that climate legislation over the mark. Kara played a key role in that, and I know a number of you in this room and on the screen did as well. So something to celebrate, something to keep us moving to raise the bar even further. Our next meeting is Tuesday, August 27th from 2 to 4. And as I said, that's one of 2 more remaining official meetings here. And one ask that I'd have of everybody is if you, to this point about sharing progress that we're having across state government, across industry, across nonprofit sector even, if people have ideas or something that seems worthy of sharing, please let us know, because that might be something we want to include in one of the upcoming meetings or in some other forum. But we're trying to incorporate that wherever we can. Want to again remind everybody to register to attend the My Healthy Climate Conference if you haven't already, and also we have the Council on Climate Solutions Luncheon with the MAC-EJ, Michigan Environmental Council, Advisory Council on Environmental Justice. Sorry, enough acronyms today. That's at 12 o'clock on day 1, I think it is, right?
Yes.
Yes. May 16th. It's at the Lansing Convention Center. And meeting materials and other resources you can find at michigan.gov/climate. Written comments can be submitted via email to eagle-climatesolutions@michigan.gov. And we are a wrap. Thanks, everybody, for a great meeting. Appreciate all that you do, and thanks for being part of this.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.